My name is Evie. When I moved to this village with my family last year, I soon made a friend named Grace. Together, we made some other friends too, secret friends. And now we're going to tell you all about them. It began one evening when I was writing in my diary. I had the strangest feeling someone was watching me. My pencil rolled off the table, and as I reached down to pick it up, something shiny caught my eye. It was a tiny brass handle attached to a small door. A little nervous, I slowly turned the handle. Inside, I discovered a staircase, and I think I saw a miniature foot disappearing up the stairs. The next morning, the door was gone. My name is Grace. I'm Evie's best friend. I could hardly believe it when Evie told me about the door she'd found. We spent hours searching her house, but we couldn't find a single clue. A few weeks later, I made an exciting discovery of my own. I was walking home from school when I spotted something hidden in a flower bed. I bent down for a closer look and realized it was another door. I opened it excitedly. Inside was a real fairy. I must have frightened her as she ran away to hide. There was a tiny table set for afternoon tea. I wondered if fairies would mind if I tasted a bit of cake. I went to tell Evie, but when we came back, just like before, there was no sign of the door. Grace and I couldn't wait to find another door, so we decided to become fairy detectives. To our surprise, the next door appeared when we were playing in the park. I was leaning against a tree when I had that strange feeling of being watched again. I glanced down, and there was a hidden key in the flowers. Grace ran over, and we decided to unlock the door together. Inside the tree was an incredible sight, a slide. We heard laughter and saw a giggling fairy whiz down the slide. Afterwards, we talked for hours. Why were the fairies letting us see these magic doors? And why did they keep disappearing? I found the next door in my garden. The first thing I did was find Evie, and we opened the door together and saw a real fairy baby gurgling and cooing. I really wanted to pick the little baby up, but Evie said we shouldn't because the fairies might not like it. For days afterwards, Evie and I couldn't stop wondering where fairy babies come from. I read in a library book that flower fairy babies arrive whenever a new plant starts growing. It must be true because after the door disappeared, a little shoot appeared nearby. It grew into a forget-me-not, and whenever I see it, I think of that lovely little baby. Grace and I have always believed in fairies, and now we're sure they exist. We were cycling along the river one weekend when Grace pointed at the riverbank. There, behind the overgrown grass, was another door. We clambered off our bikes and ran over to the door. Grace opened it, and as we gasped as an incredible throne appeared, with a beautiful fairy sitting upon it. We knew she was the fairy queen because of the royal crest on the door. She smiled at us, nodded, then disappeared. By now we had found 5 fairy doors and kept them secret. We had a feeling that the fairies only wanted the 2 of us to see into the world. But were the fairies watching us too? One day, Evie and I were walking in the woods when we stumbled upon a little door at the base of a tree. Inside was a mysterious cave lit up with tiny lanterns and fairy lights. As we watched in wonder, a pretty fairy appeared and began to collect glittering stones. We thought this must be fairy treasure, used by the fairies to make beautiful necklaces and bracelets. The fairy filled her bag, then left her glittering treats. The door disappeared soon after, and we couldn't wait to find the next one. It wasn't long before we got our next glimpse into Fairyopolis. This time it was in my very own bedroom. Grace and I had been dressing up as fairies, and as I rummaged through my clothes, I discovered another door, right at the back of my wardrobe. Carefully opening the little door, we discovered a fairy dressing room. There were little clothes everywhere, and as I reached to touch one of the silky dresses, I saw a little fairy was sitting just behind it, busily sewing away. Grace whispered in my ear and pointed to a second fairy, who was showing off one of the pretty dresses. She looked so beautiful. Last night was the most exciting night of my life. Evie and I were having a sleepover, and we were woken by a strange music. It was coming from the garden, so we crept downstairs and pulled on our coats and boots. We followed the sound of music through the garden to the wall at the end. As we got closer, the door suddenly sprang open, making us both jump. A fairy ball. The fairies didn't seem surprised to see us, and some even waved. We were mesmerized by the dancing fairies and magical music. When we began to get sleepy, we crept back to the house and into our warm beds. We are the luckiest girls alive.